While the original MacBook Air is amazing and gorgeous and fits inside a manila envelope, it is not without fault. One of the issues we hear about most frequently is that the display assembly hinges wear out easily, or they break completely, and unfortunately they're integrated into the display assembly, making it terribly difficult to just replace the hinges. So if you're looking to fix those hinges, or your LCD is broken, the best thing to do is just replace the entire display assembly. Hi, I'm MJ with iFixit, and today I'm going to show you how to replace the display assembly in an original MacBook Air. This video is a great overview of the process, but of course you're going to want to follow the step-by-step instructions and the repair guide on our site when you replace your display assembly. I'm going to get all of my parts and tools together so I can get started. For this repair, you're going to need a spudger, a Phillips 00 screwdriver, a T6 Torx driver, both of which I got from our 26-piece bit driver kit, and of course your replacement display assembly. Now that we've got all that together, I can get started by removing the Phillips screws that hold the lower case in place. And of course, I would be absolutely lost without my handy-dandy screw tray. These screws are tiny and they roll away really easily, so I like to use the tray to keep track of them and keep them organized. With all of those screws out, I can take off the bottom case. You're just going to lift it from the rear of the computer and rotate it towards the front. And now that we're inside, you can see all of the innards of the MacBook Air, and obviously it is almost entirely battery. The battery is held in place by just a few screws and one cable, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of those now. With that last screw out, the battery should just lift right out, giving me access to all the cables that are holding the hard drive in place. So I'll go ahead and disconnect those now. There are 4 screws holding the hard drive in place, and one of them is covered up by this microphone cable, so I'm going to have to deroute it before I can get access to that screw. You want to be gentle with it though, because it's a fragile cable. You don't want to go ripping it off. And once it's derouted, I'm going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws that are holding the hard drive in place. With that screw out, the hard drive should come right out, and we can move on to the heatsink and the fan, which is held in place by a few more Phillips screws. There's one screw hidden underneath this little cosmetic cover, so you're just going to want to use your tip of your spudger to kind of push that aside to get access to that screw. With all of those screws out, I can disconnect this cable, and the fan and heatsink should come out as one big unit. And that gives us access to all the cables that are connected to the logic board. This includes the microphone cable, the airport and Bluetooth cable, the trackpad cable, data display cable, DC-in cable, and the audio cable, all of which I will disconnect now. The airport and Bluetooth cable and trackpad cable are secured by a small metal bracket, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the 2 Phillips screws that are holding it in place, and then I can disconnect those cables. With all of those cables disconnected, there are just a few more screws holding the logic board in place. With the logic board out, there's only one more thing left for us to do before we get to the display assembly, and that is take care of this airport and Bluetooth bracket. Once the bracket's off, you're going to disconnect the cables underneath and then use your spudger to deroute the antenna cable, because that's going to come off with the display assembly. Okay, now remember that screw tray I mentioned earlier? This is where it comes in handy because there are 17 screws securing these two pieces together. So I'm going to get to work removing them, but I'm going to leave 2 of the Torx screws in place until I'm ready to fully remove the display assembly. With 15 of the 17 screws removed, we can put the computer up on its side and open it up. And what you're gonna do is securely hold these 2 pieces in place while you remove those final 2 Torx screws. You don't want the pieces flopping over as you're removing the screws. With those last 2 screws out, you can slowly start to separate these 2 pieces, but you don't want to pull too hard because the cables are fragile and you want to treat them carefully. And that's it, we're all done. Now, I know there were a lot of screws involved, but you saw me do the whole thing. It's not a very difficult repair. Of course, you can find all of the parts and tools for this and many other repairs at iFixit.com. And if you run into any problems during your repairs, there are lots of solutions in the MacBook Air repair guide on our site. For all the latest teardowns and repair videos, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/iFixit. Thanks for watching and happy repairing.